want to see if I can start following it on my page. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna draw like, okay, I'm gonna draw, I've got it on my page so when I can see it on my visual. Oh, perfect, okay. Yeah, okay. I didn't realize you could bring people on camera. Hi, everybody. All right, we got 7 viewers. Pretty good. Not so bad. We're going to draw whales today. Where's my paper? Oh. So, just like every other video, we're going to start with shapes again. It's going to be an ongoing kind of thing. We've got some new viewers, which is good. Happy to have you. All right, so I'm just going to get into it and start. I'm going to do a few different kind of movements and looks for these whales just because they get really fun once you start getting into it. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to do, and I'm kind of drawing at a weird angle, so just bear with me, is I'm going to start with a really long oval. just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you can see, it's got like, it's kind of a potato. If you can imagine a potato. And so they're all kind of really long, lanky potatoes in my head. So that's what whales are to me. So they always seem to have a bit of a belly. So I'm going to kind of just draw that into my circle. This is going to be a humpback whale, I think. We'll see how it goes. And then they always have like a thinner front. So when I'm drawing it, I'm going to extend that to kind of look like that. It's almost like it's turning into a long teardrop. And then it's kind of odd that their mouths kind of are more like that. It's kind of a weird kind of cutoff because you're expecting to go to a point for some reason, and I've done it a lot where I just kind of do that and I'm not supposed to. But yeah, we're going to start with that. It doesn't have to be perfect for now. We're kind of just working our way in. Whales are actually surprisingly simple, and there's just a few main points that you kind of have to go through in order to make it work. So I'm going to make them a little smaller than what my circle is because I'm trying to keep him in the page. But that's not going to be too hard because I still have to give him that belly, right? So if you're working with a circle, you guys have a big enough page, you wouldn't have to do this, but I'm going to work that way. And then I'm going to bring this part just a little bit down. And you can see it's starting to give this more of a strange shape. I'm going to just erase this part. And you can kind of start seeing how it's giving it that sort of movement. And that's what you want to see when you're kind of drawing these guys. They're long and beautiful and awkward creatures. So I'm going to just mess around, make it a little lumpier. As you know, if you have seen any sort of picture of a humpback whale, they're bumpy and they've got all these different shapes to them. And so it's a good one to start with just because all it is lumps and bumps everywhere. So when I say it's a potato, and I'm going to say it many times, it's a potato. Really vocal potato. So the next thing I'm going to do is when I see this end, it's going to look similar to the front end, except for not so blunt of a stop. It's going to just go to that point, and then what's going to happen is we're going to make some spots for the fins at the back. And these ones are going to look very small just because we're doing it in smaller scale, right? So every time you look at, like, these would be huge if you're looking from a boat and you see it smacking down in the water like that. But we're not going to try and draw a life-size whale. Because whales, like blue whales, can get up to be like 100 feet long. Guy's little. So I'm going to work with that. And then I'm going to draw. If you look at this, it's kind of like an almond shape if you start, right? And then I just kind of add this kind of triangular shape to the end of it. And that's all I'm kind of doing with that part. And then I kind of bend it down at this area so that it gives that kind of fin sort of look. Anytime you're looking at, say, a whale's fins, it always has this kind of edge to it, right? It kind of follows that. Almost like when you're drawing birds and you're drawing this kind of stick birds in the air. It's kind of like that a little bit. And then the next part I'm going to do is basically if you got a pre-drawn. If you kind of go down like this and give it a triangular sort of look, it'll start to give you a shape that you're wanting. And then I'm going to add just a bend to it and make it come back up. And remember, we're all beginners here. It's all good. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to work with for the end. And, it looks kind of weird, but it'll get there after a little bit. You'll notice I keep kind of pushing in the arrows and kind of making it a little thinner in certain areas as I go. And like I think I've said before in other videos, that it's almost like clay. You're molding what you want from it. This is why we're drawing lightly. We've got our erasers. and we're not going to put too much emphasis on any line until we've got what we want. Let me know how you guys are doing in the comments. If you've got any questions, if you're getting lines wrong, well, not wrong, but if you're getting them and you're not feeling good about them, just let me know and we'll kind of work with that, right? I can always go back and help you figure that out. So if you're looking at this, this is going to be the longest part of the bottom of the whale, and then the rest of it's kind of going to come up like they puffed their chest out, right? So it's almost like they're, if you think of those old-timey pictures of guys in suits, like the penguin suits, and they're standing up and their chest's all puffed out, that's kind of what you want for this guy. So if you see, he's starting to get that kind of puffed out chest sort of look. And then I'm going to kind of make it a little more by giving him a little bit more of a dip there. So it goes into his mouth area. Like I said, we're going to kind of just play with things. So at the end here, you see where this kind of thick area of his tail is, we're going to bring it down and follow the line of the bottom here. So again, it gives it a little more movement and a little more shape. Right? The funniest thing about these guys is pretty much every whale is going to start with a really long oval shape, unless you're doing like little cartoony guys, which I'll kind of give you guys a view of that after. But anyway, the next thing you're going to look at too is humpback whales have really small fins, dorsal fins, and they're kind of at the back of the body. So if you're looking at this guy, his fin is going to be just like a little shark fin way at the back. And so if you're going to look at this and then move that over, it should be pretty similar to that length away from where the tail is. It can be even closer, but that's kind of where I'm going to put it. And then the little shark fin's probably going to be curved more than pointed. So it's going to have just a dull sort of movement there. If I can get that right today. It's very hot. I'm sweaty. It's not it's not a good combo. But yeah, so I'm going to leave it like that. And you guys can see he's starting to turn into something. Starting to get a little more fleshed out. And then the best part, my favorite part, is adding the fins.
It's very hot.
I'm sweaty.
Humpback
whales tend to have
it's not a good combo.
long fins. They're probably the longest
so I'm
fins
gonna leave
of
it
the
like
whales that you could probably
think
think
of.
See, he's starting to turn into
and
something.
then,
Starting to get
later,
maybe
I'll
more.
draw some orca whales, and you can see just how wide their fins are.
Granted, orca whales are much more, something I think people think about when you're in BC or anywhere near like Vancouver or the island. So we'll get into that too, just so we can kind of show you how to draw some more local whales. But when I'm looking at this one, I see I've got all these drawings I've redone for this, so don't mind me looking back. But for this one, I've kind of got his fin sort of arching back, but instead I'm going to draw it forward just so you guys can see what I've done here. So their fins are quite long, like I said, and the front fin's kind of bumpy, so I'm going to just start adding some bumps to it. And then I'm going to just curve it like that. If you don't feel comfortable doing that right away, it's again another long oval shape. If you're looking at any sort of animals that you're doing, it's kind of funny actually that a lot of the same shapes will be in that animal. So whales, lots of long ovals, and again, lots of, almond shapes or, tip parts where there could be triangles. That's mostly what your whales are going to be. And because I already know that this is going to be the front fin, I'm going to erase that line. And then we're going to have our nice fin kind of just bend backwards a little bit. And I'm going to add those bumps. They don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to just put them in there. And then the top here, you can see that I've curved where that joint is. This one I don't have to do so much because it's at the back and it's kind of coming at a joint like that. When you're looking at the front part, it kind of moves over, like that. So that's there. And then I'm just going to bring the other one because I think it's more whimsical when they kind of look like that. And I'm going to just put it in that way. And that way you still get it in there, but you don't have to draw the whole thing. And just like that, we've got the start of our whale. Now, this part here is going to be the part that bothers me a bit because this is where it's like really bubbly and bumpy. Oh, thank you. And then the top of their mouth is about here. And you'll notice too, again, with like large whales and things, their mouth is like way at the top here. So I'm going to just draw it in like that. So as you guys can see, it's starting to turn into this sort of whale that we're looking for. I don't like that. Anyways, and then the eye is going to be a lot closer to the top of the head. So I'm just going to draw a circle there. If you've ever looked at a whale's eye, they're quite interesting. They look very human sometimes if you look at them. I'm going to just leave it like that because I kind of like how that looks. And honestly, that's one of the most easy ways to kind of start drawing whales. If you don't even like the eye, you don't have to. They're kind of, like I said, they're bumpy. So if you want to add those big long lines coming up, they don't even have to be very even. They just get smaller at the mouth and larger at the belly. So I'm going to just add those in there and have the lines curve up towards the mouth. So it shows that that's where they're coming out from. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to pull it back towards the back of the body because obviously they go all the way. Oh, I love whales. So yeah, so that's kind of how I would go with this guy. I'd even maybe make him a little thinner or straighter at the top here. Bring the head kind of bowed a bit down. And then you can see where the top of the head starts and it kind of goes into this part. I like that, you know, if you don't have to do it that way, but that's kind of where I work, where I kind of put it generally when I draw whales. And then I'm just going to bring this area back to more of a point. These guys are great because I know you've probably seen the pictures of humpback whales where there's like a line and say this is where the top of the water is. And you can like put little sailboats or something, right? So there's some really cool artwork out there with whales. I'm not going to steal that though, so I'm going to erase it. You can do that. There's so many cool ideas. I've seen people draw whales in the sky with like balloons, and that's kind of my favorite thing. There was an artist that actually paints animals into clouds, so they look like clouds and they're pink and fluffy. And then it's just you stand back and you look and it's a whole bunch of whales kind of flying through the sky as clouds, and I love it. So, you know. But yeah, so that's the first one. If you want, because there is a shadow difference between the back fin and the front of the fin, you can even just lightly darken the back fin there. And if you know that those are the lines you want and you want a darker, more defined line, you're more than able to just kind of go over where you've had it, right? So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to define the lines out here, mostly just because I can show you guys. And I'm going to define this one, and I know that this is the back one also, so I'm going to darken that. And I'm going to go ahead and keep defining these lines because I'm not going to change those anymore. I like where they're at. But you don't have to define all of them. It's not like you have to, there's no rules really. It's just kind of helping you figure out what you enjoy doing and figuring out how to do it. So yeah. You can do this sort of one, or you can have them where they're like flopping back, which I mean, I can show you that one also. I'm going to leave this on here for a couple minutes just so people can kind of get to this point. I don't know how far along you guys are. or if you're, still working on it. So I'm just going to leave it for a second. And I'm just going to keep playing with it until I'll see where you guys. You can also put your eye around different areas and play with it and see what you think. For me, I tried to look at different species of whales and figure out where I wanted to place things, because it gives me a good idea of what sort of species will look like, right? I lied to you. I got to redefine that line. And as you can see, I'm always erasing and putting lines in different places and rethinking what I'm doing. It's totally okay if you're getting frustrated and, having to redraw or do those things. That's okay. It's very normal, I promise you. And don't mind me, it's very hot in here. Dylan, I expect to see your painting. Or painting. You're doing a painting now. Full painting. All right. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it out. How's everybody doing so far? Already burning it? Well, that's no fun. No, I really want to see it now. I have to see it now. And it's only 4:20, so you have lots of time, and we have lots to go over. So, ha. All right. So I'm going to leave this one. I'll go back to it maybe a little later, but I'm going to take the time to get some new space here. And I'm going to work with, here, I'll show you kind of my drawing list. So we kind of did this guy, but I just moved his fin because I didn't quite like it, and it was kind of strange to me. So I think maybe we'll start and go with this guy, because he's kind of flopping back, and it's kind of the ones you see in videos. Yeah, thanks. I have many of these if anybody wants one, so let me know. But yeah, so this one he's flopping back. It's kind of what you see. I'm sure everybody's seen that video where that humpback whale flops back on that sailboat. This is that kind of movement. You can even arch the back a little more so he's really flopping, but we're going to work with this one. And as you can see, again, it's another big circle. So we're going to work on that. So you see I'm kind of putting more of a curve to this circle. I'm going to put it there. So you can see that there's more of a curve here right along this edge. And that's because, like we said, he's kind of flopping back or swimming backwards. And this way, it's also going to give us a chance. I'll show you in a second. So there's that bottom part for the back of the fin. Like we did last time. And then this time, with the front of him, I'm going to kind of just move it like he's got a chin here, right? So I'm going to bend it down and then out. And then like that, I'm going to put it in this way. And we're going to do that kind of stop off again. Right? And so, again, he's starting to turn into more than just a circle or a shape. And we're starting to kind of get somewhere with how he looks and how he's kind of working out. So because he's bending backwards, I'm going to bring these lines more like this because I really kind of want them to look a little more whimsical and playful. And you guys can change it to however you see fit also. And then this is the kind of more fun part is, like I was saying, remember those birds that we were going over and talking about? Except for this time, this one's going to be a little bit bigger than this side. So as you can kind of see, it's starting to work out a little more. Like you can see which side's farther away and which side's closer, which can be a lot easier than just kind of drawing things the same size. If we do, I'm going to start putting more intermediate drawings out, and we're going to talk about foreground and background and working with different sizes of things, because it can start to get a little more nitty gritty, to the point where, you know, too small backwards is often more of a detriment than it is helpful. And so we'll kind of work, excuse me, into that a little more. How's everybody doing in this heat, by the way? Yeah, so I'm going to just move this a little bit because I'm making that circle smaller again. And then I'm going to just make a little bit of a bend here. And you can kind of see here where I've bent it up, it shows that it's attaching more to these fins than it previously was, right? All right, so we've got that. And then if you're looking at where to place those fins, I'd place them about here in your drawing. So it's a little further forward, but close to the center. You can draw the same line if you want to try and figure out what spot's best for you. The other kind of way to think about it is where his chest area tends to be. It's almost, if you look at seals, you can see that their fins are farther forward because that's the front of their body. That's a good way to kind of manage where that's going to be. And then it's going to be, you know, a little, probably about that high up because their bellies, I don't know. Maybe we'll do this a little bit. Because he's flopping backwards, his belly's going to be turned a bit, right? So your center area here, or just a little bit up, is probably where you want to start, where that fin is. So I'm going to work with that. And again, if you, yeah, that's right. If you want, you can always do that long oval to kind of figure out where that fin's going to be. When you look at length of the fin, you can see too, if half of the fin is across the body and half of it's out, perfectly good length of fin. Good to go. And then the next one's going to be more this way. And you don't want it too far up because you want it to be sort of equal to this one. And this one might even be a little longer because it's closer, right? So now you can kind of see he's starting to do the flop back. I love these guys so much. But yeah, and remember too, those bumps and those kind of rough bits are all at the top of that fin, and then it bends right about here and comes back up, right? So just like that, bumpiness is forward. And I'm going to erase all the spots, like we do every time, that I don't need. I'm going to just work into this as much as possible to get the shape that I want. Right? Because we're all molding this into something. We're not going to worry about definite lines. And I'm definitely drawing darker than you are because you need to see what I'm doing, right? So don't worry too much about how dark I'm going. Just sketch and light. All right, so this one, we're going to need the bumps on there. I'm kind of just scribbling it in because I like that kind of style of how it looks. And again, I'm going to do that kind of curved fin all the way back up to the body. And because I know that's where I want this part of the body to stay, I'm going to darken that a little bit. And again, I'm going to work with where that mouth is going to come. So yeah, I'm going to leave it just like that. He's got his mouth area. This will be all kind of bumpy. I've never had the luxury of seeing these out, you know, in the wild, but I've watched a lot of videos and watched them come out of the water, and they're just all confusing, really. Yeah, so there we go. And I was mentioning earlier, it was kind of surprising to me, but humpback whales often don't feed, I think when they're mating or having calves for like a year or so. So, you know, I can't go like a few hours, but a year. No eating for a year. All right. So if you remember from the last whale, we're going to just go in and start working out where the shading is for the fins. I tend to try to just shade it in by going consistent ways. Or if I'm getting, you know, lazy or kind of excited, I just kind of scribble it. But yeah, again, if you want to put in those lines, you totally can. I like them because they give it a little more detail. Doing a little backwards, so don't do what I'm doing, and make sure you make it larger as you go down, not smaller like I was doing. And they don't have to be perfect. We're just kind of adding that in for a little extra flavor there. But yeah, so we've got this great kind of start to learning to draw whales with these sorts of guys. There, I kind of like that, so I'm going to make it a little more concave there. Everyone's so quiet today. Alright, so that'll be kind of closer to what you're looking at. You can get a little more detailed and kind of scribble in spots if you want. Make it your own. But yeah, that's humpback whales. I think they're really cool, terrifying, but cool. And again, I'll leave that up there for a couple more minutes, and then I'll head into some killer whales and see what we can do with that. But again, consistency is key. You'll notice with all of these that it's long ovals, circles, or triangles. And that's what you're going to work with anytime you're doing whales or any sort of, you know, things like sea creatures. Like, I mean, if you're looking at jellyfish, again, they're circles, and then maybe they have a little skirt, and then they'll have like squiggles, right? So again, I know that it's repetitive and frustrating probably, but shapes really do everything. Like, even if you're looking at this guy, he's an oval, circles, triangles. It's kind of the main few shapes that you can make almost anything into. And that's kind of how I work. I know a lot of people that will do that, and I don't think I've met any artist so far that doesn't focus on shapes for most of the stuff they do. All right. So I'm going to just define all the rest of those outer parts. I'm going to move that a little over. And again, you don't have to define it if you don't want to. I just kind of do it so you guys can see a little more. Bumps. This could go in a little bit. There. And then I can go in if I'm feeling, again, really detailed and just add little bumpy bits all over the place. Make them look a little more Really? Give him some details. Maybe I'll make him look like an angry whale. Yeah. So again, very easy. This is a very kind of laid back session just because it is not as complicated as things we've done before. Like foxes were pretty difficult. Even though everybody did a really great job, there are a lot of moving parts, right? And these guys are just a few simple parts here and there. I would like to hear if you guys have any, animals or things you're interested in learning about drawing, because then that way I can put it in my next few videos and I can get you guys into that. Or if you have any questions, we have been doing talks about just ask anything sessions where people can just pop in and ask questions about, how to do artwork, how to work with certain things. Like I said, anything really. And then we'll be doing more classes on things like painting and really just trying to round out the experience of getting into different mediums. Sketching's probably a very foundational one, so you'll want to get into that if you're looking to get into other artworks too. It's a really great tool to have when you're starting to work on getting into things like this, or painting. Makes things a lot easier, I promise. So yeah, that is this guy. I think I've left him on long enough, and I'm just gonna flip the page again. And orca whales. So this is the one that I'm kind of excited about because they are very, very large part of when we go to the island or go to Vancouver Island. Well, same place. When we go to Vancouver Island, because I always want to see them when I get on the ferry, and they scare the living daylights out of me because, they're very predatory animals and they play with their food. Well, it scares me. But yeah, again, they're the same thing. So if I were to grab or lose my paper, that's fine. You'll notice that they're the same shape. So they're just a little fatter, I guess you could say. So we're looking at, again, another oval shape. Birds with trees. Oh, I like that idea. Okay, yeah, I like that. We can do that. I always like doing birds, if you can tell. So yeah, I'll definitely do another one on birds in trees, and maybe I'll tie it into some owl drawings. I know we did. No, we didn't do owls. But yeah, I'll try and draw it into that or some other form of aviation type creatures. But yeah, there's so many birds out there, so I could probably do an entire series on drawing different types of birds. And I haven't done one on trees or landscape quite yet, so it's a good tie-in. So good idea. Good idea, Donna. All right, so the next part here is we're going to work with that tail again, right? Killer whales seem to have a little thicker of a tail at the end, and they have quite large fins. So if you're looking at this versus the humpback whale, before I go forward with this, you'll know that humpback whales are very thin and very bumpy, right? And so if I were to look back and go with my killer whale, which if I can, yeah, they'll have quite large fins, but if you look at how big the fins are, like width-wise, they're like that. So they're quite different than when you're looking at something that's a little bit larger, a little more, slow. Not even slower, they're just big. And then you'll notice too that humpback whales have kind of a flat head, whereas killer whales kind of have this kind of melon almost in front of where their mouth is, almost dolphin-like, like porpoises. So they'll have that kind of bend in, and then a tiny little sort of beak almost. And so when you're looking at things like that, you'll just see the slightest little downturn and then a flatter top. So something like that. And it's kind of hard to see with this, but it's right here. So you'll notice like that. So again, let me know if you're having any issues and I'll try and help out with that. I'm trying to see my thing. And then the other thing about them is their dorsal fins are quite tall. Like if anybody's seen Free Willy, and I feel really old because all the kids that I've been teaching lately do not know what Free Willy is, and it's terrifying. You'll notice that their fins are really large and really tall. And when they're in the wild, there's something that happens going from that environment to captivity that actually makes them bend over. And I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if it's stress or, it's terrible. But yeah, so you'll see their dorsal fin kind of come up and then it will come back down. It'll be very blunt here. It won't be sharp like a shark or anything. And then it'll come back down and then twist into the end of the body. So you'll see here. And I mean, it's pretty iconic. You'll see it in a lot of pictures and things of whales. And it'll be just behind where those, the fins are, the flippers. So if you'll see these here, just put it just a bit back, and that's probably the best place for them. Excuse me one second. Yeah. And then, yeah, their tails at the end kind of taper in, but they stay quite thick. Like they're quite, they're just a little different. And this part here, I'd even kind of go so far as to move this a little more because they don't really have that big upper jaw bit. They have more of that beak, right? So I'm going to just fix that a little bit. And then we'll get into the fun part, which is where their markings tend to be. Yeah. I dropped my paper. That's why I'm kind of jumping up and down. That's why. And then their fins on this guy is going to go down like this. And I'm going to just make it look more like he's swimming. So when you're looking at this, his fins on the back are going to be a little bit larger and a little more kind of wide. Humpback whales are very kind of sleek looking other than that big kind of gut chest area. And then killer whales are more rounded and they're just a little more, they got a lot more movement to them, in my opinion, anyways. So I'm going to just mess around with that a little bit, kind of get the shape I want. If you're looking at the fins again and you're trying to figure out the shape and things of them, again, think of almonds, think of ovals, right? So if you're looking at that, all right, so I'm going to just move some things around, kind of get that look that I want for him. And again, if you're looking at that kind of belly, they do kind of have it, but not to the same extent. And then the rest of their mouth kind of pulls up, but again, not to the same extent as a humpback whale. And then this will be a little bit more. It's all about give and take, right? So we're molding this together. And then this will be more curved here. So if you can see, I'm messing around a lot with how this shape is and how I want this whale to look, because there's lots of different factors that kind of move in with how they move and how they work. So I'm kind of okay with that. He might be a little bit of a chubby whale, but that's all right. but they're torquey. They're, you know, they're meant for speed and predatory sort of movements. And so when you're looking at things like that and you're seeing um, that sort of structure to them, it's because they're meant for different sort of eating habits, right? So with humpback whales, you know, there's krill and fish that are involved, but with and not very often fish. Like a lot of time they eat very small things for the size that they are. Um, but in the millions and trillions of krill and fish that kind of get caught up in there. There was a story that was just about a guy that got kind of stuck in a whale's mouth and he ended up getting spat out. Very, you know, Pinocchio story in my head. But yeah, so then we work with, you know, you're going to see the difference in colors in orca whales and why they're, you know, so popular, I believe. And so with that, I'm going to just move this into like, I don't know, maybe like that. I've lost my picture, so I'm kind of just working off my brain right now. Hopefully it works out. Yeah, so I've kind of just put this into where the fin goes. I think people call these sea pandas sometimes, and I kind of love that. But we'll start with that. And so you can see that that's going to be the difference between where the white area is and the dark area is. I'm going to leave this part dark because the only other part that I remember seeing, yeah, is like this on the other side, right? So I'm going to work with that. And just doing this starts to make you realize what kind of whale it is. And that's kind of awesome to me because you're like, oh yeah, okay, it's a whale. And then you start adding that and you're like, oh, okay, I know which kind of whale it is. So I'm going to work with that. I'm not going to be too perfect about this because I'm not here to kind of be like, oh, look at my whale. And then everybody be like, well, that was a lot of work. Good, nice hour, relaxing session. I'm going to move that arrow out of the way. And then again, I'm just going to kind of play with where my lines are. So I like that. I like how that is. This is where that melon's going to be, right? So if you can't figure out that and you have your circle, just draw kind of like a circle there and you'll see where that bump is going to be. And then when I see this turn down here, which I should have a little more like that, because there's a little bit, it's almost like they're frowning in a way, but this is kind of where that eye is going to be, that, or not that eye, but that white spot that people kind of see as an eye, right? And that's kind of where that white spot's going to be. Which people often say is the eye, but it's not, which is kind of funny because that's what I always thought when I was a kid. But yeah, so you're kind of seeing how he's starting to come together. And oftentimes here you're going to see the black outline on the fins. And that's all cool and all, but I think the bottom of their fins are actually white. So I'm going to just put in those black parts. And because I'm going to do this really quickly, it might look kind of terrible, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to actually go ahead and shade in so you guys can see really, really hastily. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger. Where the dark parts of this whale are going to be. So I'm not going to do this fancy in any way because it's going to take too long. This is not how I would shade anything, but I'm going to do it that way. You can see how dark this whale is. I might have been a little hasty in the sizing of this white spot, but I'm going to just leave it how it is for now. And there's a little bit more movement to it, but again, I'm not going to worry too much about it right now. I'm going to just work on getting him into those areas so you guys can see. But it's funny how quickly it starts to look like something when you start, you know, shaping him in and getting him into a spot where it looks more like what you want, right? And then I'm just gonna darken his fin, darken that one. Again, this is not how you really want to shade it, but I'm gonna just be really quick with it. When it's whales and things like that, and your shading's really difficult with sketching, it's a lot more like small movements like that than it is any sort of quick, long, sweeping movements. If you do get into coloring or drawing with pencil crayons, you'll notice that this type of, you know, movement and lightnesses and things like that will go a long way when it's not big, sweeping, you know, scribbly movements like I'm using here, which, I mean, whichever. If you're not that interested in that sort of aspect of it, then that's okay. And then I'm going to just kind of move around the outside of the eyes and the body. The lower parts, I'm, you know, kind of working with the idea that this is the darker areas below the whale, right? They are very playful and they flip around and move, and, you know, light sources will be different. But I'm going to just work with that kind of premise that he's swimming normally. But yeah, so I'm going to just go ahead and darken this so you guys can see it a little better. I can get into a whole drawing on shading and things another time, but just kind of working with that, getting it darker so you can kind of see how he looks. How's everybody doing with that? Good? Ooh, there's 10 of us now. Welcome, everybody. But yeah, so as I go, I'm going to just scribble it in. It is, you know, it's a Sunday. It's 10 to 5 on a Sunday. I'm going to just play around and sketch. But yeah, so he's starting to turn into more of what I was hoping for. You know, you've got the long fin. It's straighter here, and then it's angled here. So you'll have this and then straight like that, right? So there's that part. The edge might curve that way a bit. I don't know if these arrows help you, so hopefully they do. When you're looking at the tail area, I think in my drawing even, it was kind of more like that. So there's a bit of a more bulbous sort of movement with the tail there. And I could stand to make it a little stronger, but that's all right. So yeah, whenever you look at killer whales or, you know, whatever you like to call them, orcas, things like that, they, sea pandas, they have very strong body types. And again, if we're looking back at these guys, they're very majestic body type. They kind of just move and eat and they kind of do whatever they, you know, they're great though. They have huge brains. They actually make friendships and have really complicated social structures, which is really cool. Just like orca whales, I know in the news like about a year ago or so, there was an orca whale that lost its calf and they mourned it, right? So it's like elephants. They have very complicated social structures, and there's actually one whale. I don't remember what type of whale it is, but they actually its pitch is too high for other whales to hear, and they call it the loneliest whale in the world, which is really kind of heartbreaking because it calls out to other whales, but they don't recognize it as a whale call. But yeah, so you'll see the long, lanky kind of humpback whale version, and then the torquey kind of torpedo-like. That's a good example, actually. Torpedo-like version. I'm holding a pillow. Sorry. Of what, you know, orcas look like. They're torpedoed. So I'm gonna just darken that. And like I said, I'm not kind of worried about how that's coming out. I'm just gonna make it as dark so you guys can see it. And I mean, it's a doodle. You can scribble it in if you want. Like I said, I can go into more shading tactics and things that way, but if I'm not too worried about it, this will work just fine. And like always, you know, if you send me your photos of what you've done, I'd love to see them. I have been asking people if I can put their drawings and things on my website so other people can see, you know, the progress of what the tutorials are doing, or you know, even just showing how it worked out for you. That would be awesome. If you want to check those out, they're not up yet, but even if you want to check out the website, it's www.shayarisart.com. So it's pretty new, so give it a look. There's also on there forms you can fill out if you want to learn and join classes, if you want to see what's coming up next. And even if you just want to take a look at some of the artwork that's been done recently, or if there's commissions that have been done recently, there's a lot of things you can do on that website. Thanks to Jamie helping me out with that. Thank you, Jamie. And there, yeah, so you know, if you want to take classes or learn some more things, it's a great place to start. Or you can always message our Facebook page, which you guys know. But yeah, here he is. Also, if you're left-handed like me, you can put a paper under your hand when you're drawing, and this won't happen. Um, because I'm sweaty and it's really hot out, this is happening a lot more today. So yeah, you can save that simply by having a paper under your hand while you move and draw. Don't be me. You can see too that's making like little prints and stuff, and that's why it's dirty. It happens. I've learned things. But yeah, so that's whales. And next one we're going to be doing is bears, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun because I have polar bears and grizzly bears and sun bears that I want to do, and we'll see how far we get with it because I know it's only an hour. But yeah, I'm very excited about that one. I'm going to be putting a list of my next few classes. And like I mentioned just a little bit earlier, I'm going to start doing some painting ones every month also. So there'll be about a class every 2 weeks. So if you're interested more in painting or things like that, it's going to be a good option to start out with things. Acrylic, you can start out really easy and really cheap when you can buy dollar store paints for what we're going to be doing, even if it's watercolor, and we can get by with that. And I'm going to just start working out with movements of brush work and how to work with water and making sure that you're not getting too much or too little paint, and then color mixing. So, give that a look and see what you think with that. But as of now, our class is pretty much over. I will stay for a couple minutes and see if anybody's got any questions or if they have any comments. But otherwise, happy drawing, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I know it was a little more talk than drawing, but that's okay. And if you want to see the other whales again, just to take a look, I will move the pages. But I'm just going to kind of play around with my doodles and catch up on some comments or pictures. Again, if you want to post those photos of what you've done, looking at you people, then yeah, give me a shout. Show me what you got, and if you have any questions about it or suggestions, let me know. So yeah, we have about 5 minutes left at the session, so I'll give you guys that time if you have, again, things to say. Yeah. if you do like kind of cartoon guys, you can draw a circle. These are my favorite ones, by the way. If you do cartoony whales, they can always get... Where's his eye? So I kind of left out the eye with the killer whale because he's it's very dark and it's kind of in the darker areas. But I would look probably closer to the front of where that white spot is, like right closer to about in here. The hardest thing is this spot, with orca whales anyway. This spot's going to take the view of where the eye's going to be. When you're looking at whales, their eyes are either closer to the top of their heads or the middle area, above this white area and in front of this white area. So that's kind of your range. But yeah, their eyes are on the side because they're not going, like if you see a video and you see a whale looking at you, they're kind of moving their heads and trying to view you with like one eye most of the time. And that's because they're over here. It's different too, because with a lot of predator type animals that are land-based, their eyes are generally forward, right? So they can see where you're looking. Cats and things, their eyes are in front of them. And so animals that are more, aquatic based, crocodiles, whales, sharks, their eyes are closer to the sides. Sharks actually, when they go to bite, they put a film over their eyes and they kind of just chomp down. With killer whales, they're more pack animals, and so they kind of work in groups, almost like they've been likened to wolves almost. But yeah, look at when you're seeing any sort of predator animal. I'm making it extra dark there because that's probably where the eye's about to be. You can kind of see that. Yeah, but look at predatory animals on land and then predatory animals in the water, and it's really interesting to see where you're going with it. I know not a lot of people don't like them, but snakes are actually a really good example of another way you can tell if something's poisonous or not. Not that this has anything to do with whales, but a lot of the times, if not all the time, but a lot of the times, if a snake's eye is like a cat's eye, it's more likely to be poisonous than a rounded eye. Interesting fact. Not that you want to get that close to a snake for that, but yeah. And then if you're looking at I'm breaking stuff. If you're looking at this guy, then his eye is going to be, again, closer to the top of his body, but just above where that mouth area is. I always think humpback whales kind of look grumpy because their mouths always kind of go down like this. But, what do you do? So, eyes here for this guy most of the time. Most of the time, more likely. And then here, it's going to be pretty much right in front of where that is. It actually looks really weird if you take away the white spot and then look for the eye, because it just looks so small compared to what you think it's going to look like. But yeah, so I'd give that a look. If you're a little confused, I would just kind of, maybe even just Google it too. But generally, this area is where the eye's going to be. Always at the side, never at the front. It would look really weird if his eye was up here. So you can even see, like, that looks very strange, right? So I'm just getting rid of it. All right, you guys. So it's 5 o'clock. I'm gonna sign off because this is the end of our class. But again, message me, let me know, and yeah, let's see those photos. I really want to see what you guys got going on there. So yeah, thank you so much, and hope to see you next time.